Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new series through the book of John. I'm excited to get into this with you. These videos are going to be different. They're going to be a little bit shorter, which means that we're not going to be able to touch on absolutely everything, and it's going to be mostly looking at highlights in the text. But I'd like you to read the other bits on your own time to get the full picture of what John is saying. And so we begin with John starting off his gospel with this prologue or an introduction. And introductions are important because oftentimes the author will give us an idea of what the rest of the book is going to be like. They give us a taste, a sample of what's coming. Matthew and Luke, when they were writing about Jesus, they decide to start with his birth in Bethlehem. But John goes all the way back to the very beginning of time. And so I want us to focus as we start with this prologue on three main things that we find in this text. Who Jesus is, how people saw him and how people still see him, and finally, what he came to do. So first, who is he? Well, John starts off talking about something called the Word. And what he would have written in Greek when he wrote it down was the word logos. And that means word, but it also means a lot of other things. It means reason and purpose and truth. See, Jesus is the way that God expresses himself. But not only that, the Word or Jesus is himself God. And John writes that all things were made through him, and that in him was life. He also calls him the light that shines in the darkness. And these are some pretty big claims to make about Jesus. And you see, not everyone recognized him when he came, and many people still don't recognize him. You see, when Jesus came into this world, he came into a world that he himself created. And despite that, the world didn't even recognize him. Even the majority of his own people rejected him, which is kind of surprising, isn't it? I mean, these were people who studied the Old Testament like crazy. I mean, they read and spoke the prophecies that pointed directly to Jesus, but they didn't recognize his true identity. And even today that's true, right? People might say nice things about Jesus, but they refuse to accept what John says. And John was someone who actually knew him and lived with him. So we know that Jesus came into the world. But why did he come into the world? Why would the creator of the whole universe come as a human being? I mean, think about that. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Undercover Boss, but the idea is that the CEO of a company will go undercover and pretend to be someone who works in a warehouse or driving a truck to get a sense of what it's like for the people who work for him. Well, this is kind of that same idea, but it's on a whole other level. And John says that when Jesus came, he was full of both grace and truth. And he compares and contrasts Jesus to Moses and the law. Because in the law, God gave a list of rules to the people of Israel about how he wanted them to live. But the reality is that they couldn't keep it. And neither can we, right? We aren't able to live up to the standard that God has for us. We need to get bailed out. We need to be rescued from our own brokenness and our own sin. And that is where grace comes in. You see, grace means undeserved favor. It's like when someone gives you something that's really, really nice and you did absolutely nothing to deserve it. And Jesus gives us grace on top of grace. Not only does he rescue us from ourselves, but he shows us the way to true life. And Jesus is the one who actually created all life. Our physical bodies and this world around us is all here thanks to him, but he also makes the way for us to have eternal life, to have spiritual life for those who are spiritually dead. Jesus is also the one who created light. I mean, without light, we couldn't see and we couldn't get around. But not only that, he brings spiritual light to a world that is in darkness. And that just kind of blows my mind. So this is John's introduction. This is like a foundation that as we work through John, we're going to build on. And the things that we've talked about today are what John really wants us to understand before we get into the rest of the book. So my challenge for you this week is to take 2 minutes and read the whole first chapter of John. And remember that if you don't actually have a physical Bible like this one, you can find it on the internet. And better than that, if you don't have one, reach out to me and I'd be happy to get one to you. I am really excited to go on this journey through the book of John to find out who this Jesus really is. See you soon.